I was able to earn money doing something that I very, very much enjoyed. I was finally able to figure out what I wanted to do. I got a lot of discouragement from people because they told me that that's a very hard field to get to. I just wanted, after quite turbulent years, to have a job, to have some stability. Nothing kind of indicated that something quite dramatic would happen a few hours later. Overwhelming thought on my mind: what am I gonna do if I have to stay? Starting a business is always really, really tough mentally, financially.
Career Reset, the podcast to help you succeed as a job seeker, by Carolina Newmanen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Career Reset podcast. So in this episode, I'm gonna share the third and I promise final part of my career story. This was supposed to be one episode podcast, but I just got a bit more into it, and I think the real value of me sharing this story is not to give you a quick overview of I applied here, I got this job, I applied there, got that job. But the real value is to tell you more in depth, like what I've been going through, what was happening, how I felt, and especially talk through the main struggles, because that is something not everyone is willing to accept when they talk about their career journeys. And I have processed everything that I've gone through, and I feel really okay sharing it here. But this, I promise that in this episode, I will bring it all together. There is still quite a few things to go through, but I'm determined to finish it today. So for this episode, more than for the previous ones, very important to say the disclaimer that I'm sharing my journey. So I'm sharing my side of the story and my subjective view. It is not possible for me, and it is not even my goal to give some objective overview of the situation that I found myself in. I can only speak for myself, for how I felt, for what I was going through. But inevitably, the story does involve other people, other companies, and of course their view of the situation could be completely different. But I am focusing on my side of the story because that is something nobody can argue against, that how I felt and what I believed I was going through. I think it's important to set the tone of what I'm trying to do here and what I'm trying to achieve with sharing my story. Okay, but let's get into it. So where I left off the last episode was when I was unemployed. I was a full-time student in my second and last semester of my master's studies, and I was starting my coaching training. So this was a very interesting time in my career journey, and it was really time of trying to find myself in terms of my career. So as I talked about in the last episode, my first a job experience that was supposed to be related to my background, that was supposed to kind of set me off, did not go so great. And instead of just accepting that, okay, this was one not very positive experience, but let's move on, I just kind of put too much weight onto it, too much meaning, and I thought I need to completely rethink who I am and what I want. And I knew that time was in a way running out, because after I would finish my master's studies, then I would really have to go out into the world and look for jobs and properly kickstart my career. And in this time, I was asking myself almost daily, what do I want to do? Like, what do I actually want to do? Having a business degree gives you a lot of freedom, a lot of different options. And I studied very generic business degrees that gave you the basics or the basic overview of all the main areas. So finance, marketing, HR, operations, logistics, management consulting, like all these areas I somehow knew I could theoretically work in. But the problem was that nothing seemed exciting. Like basically, if I'm really honest how I felt back then, I just did not want to have a job, which is of course a problem because I had to have a job. But maybe this is also common for many business students, that I thought that it's also fake and it's also capitalistic and there is no real purpose to anything, which was kind of supported by the fact that I was going through this coach training that was very much about finding meaning and helping people. And at the same time, I was also volunteering with this one Finnish nonprofit that helps refugees and immigrants find jobs or start businesses in Finland. And that was something that gave me so much meaning. So it was a very confusing time. I spent a lot of time reading some books that help you to find your strengths and define your path. As I mentioned last time, I was in this coaching program, so I was also getting support through that. To really understand yourself and to really define what you want, it is not like a fun task of self-exploration. It's actually a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of time. You need to answer some really tough questions. So it was also a very exhausting time. But my main source of joy was the coach training. And I was going through it without any ambition to start my own business. Of course, this topic was discussed in the course, that there's this possibility to work as a coach, but to me that was back then extremely abstract. I didn't understand how that would even work, how I would start a business, how I would find clients, how I would be able to get any money from it. So I didn't even consider that as an option, but I just really enjoyed coaching. And when the course finished, I reached out to all of my friends and all of my family and asked them if they would be interested to be coached by me for free on any topic. And I also asked if my friends could reach out to their friends. So I was able to gather quite a lot of people who were interested. And I went into it with a very open mind because I just wanted to practice the skills that I learned. So back then I had, I think, about 2 sessions per day. So that was quite a heavy workload on top of doing my studies and starting my thesis. And of course, I don't think I was as good a coach as I am now after doing it for several years, but maybe for the first time since I was in my teaching job, if you listen to the first episode, I again got that feeling of doing something that I really, really enjoyed, doing something that I was good at, doing something that was purposeful, like this kind of situation where you just completely lose track of time and you lose track of everything. You're just there in the moment. You're focused on the task, which for me was talking to the client and helping them. It did not bother me at all that I was doing it for free. Firstly, I did not have yet the confidence to charge because I did not have any reference cases where my specific coaching actually helped people. It was purely charity from my side, but I think it gave me even more than it gave to the people. And what was even more, shocking is that it worked for the people. The people started seeing some tangible results in their life. They felt better, they were more confident, they were able to get jobs or get promotions because of my coaching. And that was it was very hard for me to believe, because the imposter syndrome, that I was actually able to help someone. I could see that it's not just something that I enjoy, but the person enjoys. And on top of that, the person also is seeing results in their life. So I was starting to get the confidence to ask for money because I could see that the people they were making money as a result of the coaching. It was also the first time that the thought of I could do this as a job popped into my mind. I told myself that in an ideal situation, this is something I would absolutely love to do. But also that thought really overwhelmed me because I had absolutely no clue, how would that work? How would I find clients? How much would I need to charge? how much would I need to earn to be able to support myself. And I was not mentally ready to start figure these things out. I felt I'm still too junior. I still felt like I need more experience. But like 95% of the clients that I worked with approached me with wanting to help with their job situation. I realized that I really enjoyed talking about these topics, that even though I was not the biggest fan of work myself, I found it very fascinating how different people approach it, like different goals and ambitions that people have, and also how important in the end work is to our life, that it defines to some extent who we are, it gives us meaning, it helps us to realize our purpose and reach our goals. So even though I had also a few clients who, for example, wanted help with their studies, or one who wanted help with relationships, I found myself that that was not the area that excited me as much as working with people on improving their work situation. So that's where the thought of career coaching first originated. And another aspect that made me rethink that I could become a coach is that one of the clients told me, even though it was supposed to be free and I absolutely did not ask anyone to pay me anything, at the end of this process, this client asked me what is my bank account number, that it was so valuable for him that he wants to pay me. And that was very new experience for me, that even though the person could have get that support for free, they found it so valuable that they decided to pay me, and they paid me actually quite nice money. And that was such a great feeling, not like to just have a bulk of money landing on my bank account, of course that is nice, but the fact that I was able to earn money doing something that I very, very much enjoyed and something that helped the other person. And that was really a defining moment of me deciding that maybe not now, but at some point, I definitely do want to do this. That is the only thing I can imagine myself doing in the long term. And on one hand, I was very grateful that I was finally able to figure out what I wanted to do. And on the other hand, it was really scary because I had absolutely no clue how would that even work. The thought of like having to promote myself somewhere back then was absolutely terrifying. Like the thought of me showing my face and talking about the things I'm talking here was like out of the question. No way, absolutely never. And it's funny that it's not even that long time ago. So even though that would have been something I would absolutely love to do, I thought at that point it was too risky. And I just wanted, after quite turbulent years, to have a job, to have some stability, to have some secure income, and at the back of my mind to build some idea how I could start coaching. So I pretty much discouraged myself from starting back then. I still think that was a good decision, that I was not mentally ready for such a big step. But this was the point where I used one of the tools that I use now with my own clients. So I knew what would be my end goal, what I really wanted to do, which was to start a career coaching business. But I still knew that I had to apply for jobs. But it was then much easier to think what kind of jobs I would focus on, because I would focus on the jobs that would help me to get to this goal. And I realized that to be really able to help people with career coaching, which very often involves job applying, it would be incredibly valuable to have experience with recruitment. I would almost say that it's a necessity for a good career coach to have experience with recruitment. So instead of my previous approach to job applying, that was just applying to everything, I decided that I would only focus on HR and recruitment specifically. I got a lot of discouragement from people because they told me that that's a very hard field to get to if I don't speak the local language fluently, that that's a field that's very hard to get into if you don't have experience. But I just ignored that. I thought that surely there must be one entry-level job that would be okay with me speaking English. It was quite challenging to find these jobs, but now the difference was that I knew what kind of jobs I wanted. I didn't approach it just from like, I need a job. I approached it from, I want this kind of job because I have some goal and this job would help me get there. And I was absolutely not interested in, again, being in that job seeking misery. I wanted to find the job fast. So for the first time ever, I actually decided to approach it seriously, to not just put together a CV with my best common sense and choose words that sound smart and just telling myself that I'm smart and that I will figure it all out myself. I started consuming a lot of resources on job seeking, on how to succeed, how to write CV, how to improve LinkedIn profile. My university organized different career talks. I attended all of them. I took notes. I implemented every single advice that they told me. I was also very strategic with the way I was applying for jobs. I tracked all the job applications. I gave myself goals that how many jobs I would apply per week. I started being much more active on LinkedIn, following the companies that interested me and just profiling myself and also because I went through the coach training and I was overall consuming a lot of personal development, my mental health was much better, my emotional resilience was much better. So I was able to navigate the negative aspects of job seeking that you don't hear from a company or you get rejected. Like, it did not crush me as much. I just accepted it as like, okay, yeah, this didn't work out, let's move on. If I would have to say what was the biggest game changer, if it was the CV strategies and the job seeking strategies, or if it was that I was mentally much more stronger, it was definitely the second, the mental resilience and the ability to control my emotions that helped me. And that's why I teach that now as a super important part of job seeking. But most importantly, it worked. I started finally getting the interview invites and I was able to proceed to further stages. I even was contacted on LinkedIn by recruiters offering me jobs, so that also gave me a lot of confidence. But none of the jobs were as closely related to recruitment as I would have wanted until I found this one job that was about headhunting for tech people, which was very interesting. It wasn't something that I considered. So even though I did not fully understand what the job was about, I decided to apply. And that job application, it required a CV, a LinkedIn profile, and to record, I think, 1 minute video where I answered like 3 questions. And earlier in my job seeking journey, if that had been the requirement, that would have been a reason for me to say, no, I'm not applying for this. I'm not recording a video. I'm not comfortable with this. What an unreasonable requirement. But now I thought, okay, this is the requirement. I want this job. I will record a video. I can talk for a minute. Even though back then I was really cringy in front of a camera. And my initial tendency was to extremely overthink it, write a script, and find some beautiful background and just take it way too seriously. But then I thought that no, it's 1 minute video. I will do a few takes and try to not stumble upon my words. But even if I do, like, whatever, I'm a human. And so I recorded it, I submitted it, and I heard back within a few weeks that I proceeded to the next stage, which was an online test with different questions related to recruitment, related to my motivation, and related to my understanding of the field. Some of the questions were quite strange, and I again did not overthink it a ton. I sat down, did the best I could, sent it off, and waited, and I was then invited for an interview. And long story short, that whole process led in the end to a job offer. But I want to address a mistake I did when that job offer came. So early on in the process, I was asked for my salary request. I gave my salary request, and then the offer I received was lower. It was about 500 euros lower than was my request. And back then I did not know these negotiating games that I know now, that you should ask for more than what you would in the end be happy with, because it is more likely that the offer will be lower. So I was informed about the offer, and I was not happy with the offer. I think it is super important that when you get a job offer, that offer excites you, that you do not have any hesitation to say yes. And I had that hesitation. But my very flawed logic that I now would not accept for my clients, and I would talk them through it, was okay, I am unemployed at the moment. I earn zero money. I was not entitled to any kind of unemployment support whatsoever. So this salary is not something I want, but it is still more than zero, right? And I told myself, hey, after the trial period, I will ask for a raise. And they also told me that there is some kind of a bonus system that I did not even investigate very deeply, which I should have. But I told myself, okay, whatever, I will just take it. Although there was not this like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I was like, this is fine. It's a job that I wanted. The conditions are okay, whatever. And now this is exactly what I help people with, to be able in this situation to at least ask, at least try to negotiate conditions that would make them feel more excited about the job. And it's not at all about being greedy, about only caring about the money. It is super important that you feel valued also financially for the job you do. Because I could try to convince myself that I'm fine, but deep down I was not fine. I felt very underpaid for the job that I would do, which means that my motivation to show up and like really outperform and work my hardest for the company was very low. And this was also supported by the fact that when I talked to other people, to my friends, and they asked me what is my salary, everyone who I spoke to told me, oh my God, that is so low, you definitely need to ask for a raise, you should be earning at least this amount, which did not help to have this external validation that I was underpaid. Did not do wonders for my commitment to this particular job. And a lot of my thoughts and a lot of my focus was just, when can I ask for a raise? So that is just a side note, that why I think I'm now able to help other people negotiate really good offers for their jobs, that I push them to ask for even more they would have asked for. I think the reason why I'm able to do that is because I've personally gone through the situation, through this like bad offer, and I did not handle it very well. But okay, let's move on. I received this offer, I accepted it. I was still super excited to get this job. Like, it was exactly what I wanted, exactly what I thought would really help me, and a job that I was genuinely excited to do. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, my very enthusiastic phase before starting my first business job, I was in a very similar enthusiastic phase now, because there was like a month and a half between the time I received the offer and the time I would be starting. So I read so much about recruitment. I listened to millions of podcasts on recruitment. I was really excited. I really wanted to be able to do well as fast as possible. When I started the job, like, everything went well. I was learning so much about the company, about recruitment. I was quite quickly put on my first project. So this is maybe good to mention that I was working for a recruitment agency, which means that it was a company that other companies were hiring to handle their recruitments. And that was a very exciting aspect of the job, that I would be able to get to know different companies and their recruitment processes and what are they looking for in candidates, as I worked with them through this agency, which was, I believe, more valuable than if I just worked like an in-house recruiter, which means that I would work with just one company and I would only know what is their process like. Overall, that and like working environment, consultancy is very dynamic. I think it's a really good environment for young professionals because it is very demanding, but you also learn a lot. It's very exciting when you get when you are put on a new project, you're naturally forced to just learn. And what I also really enjoy that recruitment, and especially agency recruitment, is very clear how well you're doing. It's not the kind of work that you can hide behind and you are not really sure are you doing well or not. There are many different metrics that you can measure and you know exactly if you're doing well or not. So basically, are you able to find good candidates as fast as possible? Are you able to take them through the process so that in the end they accept the offer? And are you able to make the client happy? That's basically all that matters. And I was a junior recruiter. I was mainly focused on finding the right profiles on LinkedIn, contacting them, and having the first discussion. It's called screening in recruitment. It's like the very early first phase of a recruitment process. And based on these metrics, I was doing objectively really well. I was able to find the right candidates in the time, or mainly even earlier than was required. So I thought that everything was going well. The problem was, from quite an early stage, I started feeling like that personally and culturally, I was not a very good match for this company. And I know this cultural fit can be a very controversial topic in recruitment, but it was simply a fact that I felt very different from all the other people. I just felt like I did not fit in, which is something that probably would not matter in a larger company with hundreds of employees where these personalities don't matter that much. But in a smaller company, that can really affect your day-to-day, your progress, your everything. To explain where the differences mainly came from, basically, I am the kind of person that my job is definitely not my life. Even now when I'm an entrepreneur and I really love what I do, and what I do requires an extreme amount of commitment and dedication, I still have absolutely no problem to close my laptop at the end of the day and spend time with my husband and spend time on my hobbies. I have zero interest spending more time on my work than necessary. And I also was never particularly interested in finding some friendships in my job. It was important for me that I have colleagues who I can trust, who I can communicate well with, who I can rely on. But that was pretty much it. If we don't hang out after work, that was more than fine to me, because I had my friends, I had things that I wanted to do after work, and I did not need that all my time is filled just with company-related activities and people from that company. But since this was a small company, it was very close-knit. Many people there were very close friends. Many people like to spend time after work with their colleagues. And overall, there was this sense that it's more than just a company and that we are more than just a colleague. Often the word family was being used, which is nowadays considered a bit toxic. And I was just not interested to have a family in my company. I have a family and I wanted to spend time with that family. And there was nothing nobody was telling me that they perceived some differences or that there was some problem. But I started seeing that when I received some feedback, the feedback was not always so directly related to the results, to the objective performance metrics, but often the feedback was more on my way of working, my way of talking, my way of being, basically about my personality. Why am I more not like this? And that was very confusing for me, because I kept repeating, but look at the results. If I'm able to get the results with a slightly different way of working, isn't that the main point? I did not back then have the confidence to navigate it as I would navigate it now. I perceived that obviously the problem was in me and I had to change. So I started more pretending that I'm more like other people. I started being more friendly. I forced myself to stay for these after work events because I thought that that is a necessary aspect to succeed in that company. But I could feel that it was still not enough and I just could not change who I was. And it became really confusing for me because I was very interested in the job. I really enjoyed the task, but I kind of felt like that all the time, I'm not enough, and that there is something like inherently wrong with me, that I'm like inherently worse than everyone else, and that's obviously not a very good place to be at. But as I was progressing, I was taking on more and more responsibilities, and I was, of course, interested to get a promotion and to take on the other stages of the recruitment process. Basically, with almost with every single project that I started, I took on a little bit more until I basically did the whole process with someone senior watching me, but I did it all myself. So then when I brought it up that would it be time for me, when I kind of proved myself, to move to the next stage, I thought it was like a no-brainer, but it was not a no-brainer, because I was told that I did not show enough enthusiasm towards progressing, which was very surprising for me. But overall, like, not showing enough enthusiasm was like a repeating problem with me, because I am not very enthusiastic person. And secondly, and this is a very interesting phenomenon, that was the first time I encountered it, but now after many clients have told me a very similar situation in their jobs, I realized that it's a thing. Basically, when we ask for promotion, what we want usually is, at the very minimum, change in job title, increased salary, and increased responsibilities. Those three are like a package of what a promotion includes. But what often ends up happening is that people approach their boss asking for that promotion based on some criteria that either was like agreed, or based on the fact that they've been doing a good job for a long time. And what they are offered is only 1/3 of this package, and that is more responsibilities, without the title increase and without the pay increase. And of course, that is very important, that in your job you get more and more responsibilities and you grow more and more, but it's unfair to expect you to take on more and more and get the same from the company. That's not how it should work. Often when people bring it up that they would also like the pay increase and the title, they get a bit of a backlash that, do you only care about the money? I thought you mainly care about the responsibilities, which is like, it's a bit twisted. And I'm really happy that I've now helped several people to navigate this like a fake promotion, because again, that is a situation that I was in, that I was taking on more and more and more, and still always when I said, okay, would it now be time to get the promotion, I was just given an additional responsibility. I was told that, okay, you want a promotion, you want more responsibilities, you can take on even more, but with the same title and with the same money. And eventually I just could feel myself giving up, or thinking that, okay, if it seems that no matter what I do, I will have the same title and the same salary, why even bother like trying harder? On top of that, this was the time economically when recruitment was not doing really well, when companies were starting to lay off a lot of people, and when a lot of the companies stopped hiring. And as a recruitment agency, if you don't have projects for recruitments, there is very little you can do. So it even stopped being possible that I would be able to progress, because there was kind of nothing to do. We were offered the option to join the sales team to help with sales, but after my previous work experience, I was very determined to not do that. Firstly, because I already knew very well that it's not as easy as just call companies and send them messages, that if that worked, no company would ever struggle with sales ever. And secondly, because I knew that is absolutely not the thing I want to be spending my time on. And as this time was going on, I could just feel like myself being very disengaged from the job, from the company. We were often told that now is the time where we all need to do the heavy lifting for the company and try really hard. But things were going so badly that eventually the inevitable happened, and the company announced that they would be doing layoffs, that they were running out of money at such a speed that it was no longer sustainable to keep the same amount of employees. And the way it works in Finland is that it's not as simple as that the company can just announce we are doing layoffs and then send emails to the people who are affected. There is this kind of time that is called negotiations. And what it in theory is supposed to represent is that the employer, the company, suggests some measures how to save money. They explain that it is now absolutely inevitable to let people go, otherwise the whole company will go bankrupt and everyone will lose their jobs. But there are employee representatives appointed, and they are supposed to try to negotiate if there would be a way to, for example, let go of less people, or if there would be somewhere else where the money could be saved to protect these employees, which in theory sounds very nice, but in practice, this process is often a formality. The employees do not have the same bargaining power as the employers, and mostly it's done so that there are just these formal meetings where different proposals are discussed, and at the end, anyway, what the employer suggested gets implemented. But because this formal procedure has to happen, there is quite a long time from the moment the company announces we will be doing layoffs and the moment the people affected find out I am being laid off. But from the moment I saw how many people the employer suggests to lay off from each team, for some reason it was so specific that I knew that it would be me. Like, I can't explain. Well, I can explain. It was quite clear because if I put it very honestly, I was not very well liked in the company, and it was quite clear that I would not be very missed. Also, the fact that I was the most junior, so I did not, bring in big bucks. I was often put on projects that did not have like the highest priority or were not the most lucrative clients. So it like made total sense. There would be no surprise that it would be me. So when this happens, that layoffs are announced, people have different approaches to it. Some people will start to really work hard to prove themselves and to validate their position in the company and to show that they should definitely stay. I was at this point a bit too tired to do that. And I started more thinking like, okay, if it is me, what am I gonna do? And this is where my idea for my coaching business came up again. And I thought that, okay, I have now worked for about a year and a half in recruitment. I've gathered a lot of valuable experience that if I was able to help people as much as I did before this experience, I will be even more valuable now. I thought that it was a really cool opportunity to have the time, and also because I would be paid some like severance pay to invest and to try to start my coaching business, because the alternative would be applying for jobs. And as I mentioned, the economy wasn't doing very well, and often in companies the HR and the recruitment departments are hit the most, so there were very few open jobs for recruiters. Anyway, I was not interested in trying to figure out some like other field that I would be applying for jobs in. And I thought what may very well end up happening is that I would be just stuck in job applying. And so slowly I started planning how I would do it, how I would launch my business, what would I need to do. And I basically decided that if I stay in the company, I will still kind of start doing some things towards launching my business. And if I'm let go, that will just be my full focus. So I wasn't very stressed during the process because I had this plan and I started being very excited about taking this step. And if you have been in a company that has gone through layoffs and that has been in a very serious financial struggles, you probably know that the environment and the mood is not the greatest. There is a lot of finger pointing, there is a lot of talking behind each other's back. It was just such a strange time that at the same time we had to be like business as usual and we had to pretend in front of our clients that everything is going well. And then it finally came to the day when we would hear who are the people who are affected. And that day I remember very, very vividly because I knew I would have my meeting at 1 p.m. And still in the morning, it was like business as usual, like working on projects, updating people, what was going on. Nothing kind of indicated that something quite dramatic would happen a few hours later. And I was in a way nervous, but there was this like overwhelming thought on my mind, and that was, what am I gonna do if I have to stay? And that was very interesting because on one hand, it would obviously be safer and easier if I got to stay. But at the same time, I was so done and I had a plan what I would do instead. And that plan really, really excited me. And the money that I would get would allow me to realize this plan. I really started feeling like that is my way out and that I need to get out. And sure enough, at 1 p.m., I did hear that my contract was terminated. Now, although I saw it coming, so I was okay with that fact. What I did not see coming was that it would be this kind of like pack your things and leave. It was virtual, I was at home, so nobody told me to leave. But I was told that like my access to everything would be cut off at 5 p.m. and that day was my last day of work. And that really surprised me because I was involved in different projects. I was working with other people. They were dependent on my work. They were dependent on my knowledge of where the project was. And I had very few hours to get everything done. And you could say I wouldn't need to care, that I could just close my laptop and be done with it. But I still had enough integrity that I wanted to like leave knowing that I finished my part of the job. I did not want to leave the people without knowing what's going on. I didn't want that the clients think that I just one day disappeared and never gave them an update of what's the situation. So after I heard this, I took like a small emotional break to process it, and then I was off to work. I was sending emails, sending messages, putting together reports of where each of the projects are at, and just going through my email if there is something like super important that I need to keep. I was sending messages to people like, it was great to work with you, like can we exchange phone numbers? Like it was a crazy day, and it felt extremely strange to then like really at 5 p.m. to open my email and it said you have been logged out. So that was the end of that. All in all, I felt surprisingly fine, but I think it's also fair to say that I live in Finland that has very generous social benefits, so you get very good unemployment money. And I lived with my husband in our apartment, so it was not like that I was completely alone, completely on my own, and it would mean that I would have zero income from the next month onwards. So that is I think that's fair to give this disclaimer that I was in quite a fortunate position where I did not need to stress about my livelihood or that I would be jeopardizing like the livelihood of other people. Nobody else was financially dependent on me. So I'm spending quite a lot of time talking through this, but I think that layoffs is something that has affected quite many people in the past years, and it is something that people are not very openly talking about it. I see a lot of people posting on LinkedIn, hey, this happened, super grateful for the journey. I really did not feel the need to post anything like this. I felt like that from that on, I did not owe that to the company. And since my plan was not to jump into job applying, I did not put my open to work. That is also something I recommend to everyone. Like just the first hours, maybe even days after a layoff, just don't do anything. Just process what happened and decide what next. I already had that plan, so I knew what I would be doing, but it's not like that Monday 5 p.m. my job ended, Tuesday 9 a.m. let's start building a business. I just decided that I will give myself as much time as I will need to process it and to decide my next steps. If it would take week, 2 weeks, months, I was okay with it. So then on the Tuesday, I did pretty much nothing. I just chilled. I just like thought a lot about things. But in all honesty, like I was fine. I was really ready to start working on something else. So then on Wednesday already, I started taking the first steps towards opening my business. I started thinking about launching a website. I contacted my friend who's a web developer if he would be interested in helping me with that. I met with a mentor to ask what are the steps, how to basically start. I wrote a plan, what I'm planning to do, and I got really into it. And after months of being very down, struggling, and after months of feeling like no matter what I do, I will never be able to progress anywhere, I finally again found like that ambition and that drive to make something else work. So I basically spent the summer preparing to launch the business, getting all the admin set up, launching my website, thinking about what kind of services I want to offer, thinking about what kind of clients I want to work with. And then at the end of the summer, I launched my business. And on the very first day that I launched it, I got my first client. So that was really good time. And since then, obviously, starting a business is always really tough mentally, financially. So I'm not gonna say that it's been like a super smooth journey. It definitely hasn't, and it's not even meant to be. But because the story that I wanted to share here was supposed to be about my career, about my journey as an employee, and I think my entrepreneurship journey does not count to that. It's like a whole different journey, which I'm happy to share. If that is something that interests you, you can definitely send me a message. But because my content is about careers, jobs, employment, I feel like it's one not very relevant for many people. And also because I'm still very much going through it, I do not yet have that perspective to be able to tell it in some like a meaningful way. I think that I am able to share my career story now really well because a lot of the things, it's been years since these situations happened, but it is always helpful to reflect with a bit of distance on the situation. And I do not yet have that distance. I'm very much deep into it, but like just as an overview of, because it's been now a bit over a year since I launched my business, like I think it was the best decision I could have taken. I have had many highs and lows, but overall it's been like the most defining year of my life. I've done so much, I've met so many people, I've learned so much, I've grown so much as a person. Like if I say it's been only a year, it's absolutely amazes me how much I have been able to do. I worked with clients one-on-one. I started posting on LinkedIn. I created different resources. I taught workshops and webinars. I started this podcast. I created an entire online course for job seekers. I did that all myself, like the whole content. I recorded it all myself. I edited it all myself. I wrote the whole workbook. Like the amount of work I've been able to do in just a year, and to think that for most of that year I was actually pregnant, it is really amazing. And I have no shame in saying that I am really super proud of myself. But as mentioned, I'm not gonna go too much into detail about how that's been going, because I feel like it's not maybe part of my career journey, it's part of a different journey. So that is the end of my story. I hope you found it insightful or maybe interesting. Like I also like these podcasts just because I'm very nosy and I want to know what people are going through. But I hope there have been some situations where you were able to relate. I would love to hear from you. You can either send me a message on LinkedIn, which I will link down below, or you can send me an email. I will really happily read any kind of story, anything you have to share, so that I don't feel like I've been just talking here to a wall. But even if I have, like, this has also been very interesting experience for me, because I have talked through my experience with my coaches, with my mentors. I have reflected on the situation, but for the first time ever, I told it from start to end. And from the next episode onwards, I will again focus on giving you tips to succeed in your job seeking, because enough about me, and let me help you with your careers. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and overall this series, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a great week.